On the assistant page, I want to create a form. Let's say form. Inside this form, I want to have a class name. BG black, rounded medium, let's say that is gonna have the width of 600 pixels, I think. We need to put something inside this form to show it. Let's make the width of 1000 pixels. Alright, I'm gonna position center, let's say mx-auto. Let's put a margin top of it, let's say margin top of 10. Alright, and now if I'm gonna put here a height of, let's say 1000, I put it 10,000, 1000, alright. Here you can see that our sidebar is not fixed, and for that we need to set to this page the max height of height, and everything that is overflow on this one needs to be on scroll. Alright, so for that I'm gonna put for this page the max height of screen, and the overflow to be scroll on the y axis. Alright, so now if I'm gonna scroll down, you can see that our sidebar is not going up. Very good. So now inside our form we need to create the fields for the creation of the assistant. So we have an instruction field, a name field, let's say here instruction field, a name field, a description field, alright, the tools that we want to use, alright, metadata I think we don't want to use in this tutorial, the field IDs as well. We're gonna create an assistant without the input of files, but in the next video, if you want, I'm gonna create this option for you. Alright, we need to have a model input. Alright, so now let's create our fields. And for that, I'm gonna use from Chatien the input component. You can see it's very cool how this input element looks like. And for that, just like the button, I'm gonna hit this command. I need to import the input. You can see that to the input you can put a label here to indicate what is the input for. and for that we need to use a label from Chatien. And to get a label, let's put add label. Alright, and now we can use this for our name input field. Let's say here that is gonna be name field, assistant name. Alright, here I'm gonna put the name, type is gonna be type of text, the ID is gonna be name, placeholder is gonna be the name, alright, and also we need to give a name property that is gonna help us later to get the values from the input. Alright, and for the name I'm gonna say name. Alright, going back to our interface, you can see here that we have the input field. Alright, I can see the label. Let's say for the label that I want to have the class name of text white. Let's put this. You know what? Also, we might create a component for this input type to help us later to be more organized. So inside the components, let's create an input folder. Let's say inputs. Alright, and inside the inputs folder, we're gonna create a text input field. Alright, .txx rfce. Let's create a component. And here we want to put all the logic for the input of type text. Alright, and for that we're gonna copy all of this, and here text input. Alright, let's import the text input. Alright, here we're gonna put the logic. We need to import the label and the input. Alright, and we see the same results. But now for this form, let's say how much space it takes. Let's give a border of 2. I think it's take all the space. And now we want to organize all the inputs inside this form. Flex dash column to put all the elements inside the column. Alright, there's this text input is gonna take, here it say max width of SM. No, I don't want a maximum of SM. I want to take all the space. Now inside the form I want to put a padding to look more cool. Let's say padding of 10. Now you can see that I have a much better design for the assistant name. Actually, let's put a much bigger padding. Let's say padding 20. So now I have the assistant name input. Next I want to put an input for a description and for the instruction field. But this field is gonna take a lot of space, so we need to not to use an input, we need to use a text area. For that we can see here on Chatien that we have text area component. Alright, looking at the code, we need to hit this command at first to import the component. Here we have the text area with the label component. Inside our input components, inputs components. We're gonna create a new component. Let's say text area, input dot tsx krfc. Now I'm gonna create a component and I'm gonna put all of this content here. Let's import the label and the text area. Now let's import here the text area input. Alright, make sure you import it. Alright, but now I want to use the same text area for the description field. For that I'm gonna use the same component, but here inside I'm gonna pass some properties to change the style of this text area dynamically. So for that I need to pass a name equals to, let's say, instruction. I want to pass a title, instruction. Alright, I want to pass a placeholder of type instructions. Alright, then I need to go inside the component, the text area input. Here I want to get all the properties that I passed to this component. Let's say name, title, and placeholder. Actually I don't want to pass the placeholder because I'm gonna do this dynamically. Alright, and for the here I need to define the types of the properties. Let's say name is gonna be string and the title is gonna be string as well. Alright, and now the name, and now here I'm gonna put the title, and here I'm gonna put the name equals to the name. The ID is gonna be equal to the name as well, and the placeholder is gonna be dynamically, and I'm gonna say here type your and instead of message I'm gonna say $sign and curly braces, and here I'm gonna put the name. Here I'm gonna remove the placeholder. The title I'm gonna put it with the capital I, and here I'm gonna do the same with the description. I'm gonna pass here as name the description, and as instructions I'm gonna put the same description with the capital D. Alright, let's take a look of our UI. Alright, here it says that I need to use a client component. Inside our input as well. Let's restart our server. Control C here in the terminal to close the server and run npm run dev again. Right. Assistant name. Now we want here to put the name as well. Let's create here as well the name and the title. Okay, Copilot help me here. The title inside the placeholder we're gonna put just like in the text area the same thing. Alright, go back to text input. Title, name, and for the text input here we can have a type of email, text, number, and for that we need to give another property. Let's say type. We go here, we need to define the type that is gonna be string. So here inside the text input we need to pass the name, that is gonna be name. We need to pass the title, that is gonna be the name with capital N. Alright, and the type, that is gonna be a string. Now text is gonna be a text for the input. Alright, and everything is good in our interface. But here we can see the label, because inside of text area input here we need to put class name text white, HTML4 is gonna be the name. Alright, let's refresh the page. Here you can see instruction, description, assistant name. Let's put here assistant and the title. Right, much better. Now inside our form we're gonna space them because they are too close on the y-axis. Let's say space dash y dash 5. Alright, much better. Now let's look to our assistant creation. We need to pass the model, and for that we're gonna pass by default the GPT-4. So here we're gonna say p and the model is gonna be GPT-4. For this demo we're not gonna add dynamically to select your model, because we're gonna put the model GPT-4 by default. Let's say everything here is gonna be text white. Alright, let's make this much bigger. Next we're gonna select our tools for this demo, and here you can see the tools can be a code interpreter tool object, a retrieval tool, and a function tool. So here that we have the entire form, we just need a submit button. Let's say create assistant submit button. Alright, let's create this component inside the buttons folder. Let's create a new button called create assistant submit button.tsx. Alright, rfce. Here we're gonna define our button. Let's use the button from ShadCN with the variant of secondary. Let's make this a client component. Let's import this button. Let's put here create assistant. Alright, and next we need to import our button into our form. Alright, and now you can see that we have here the button. Now let's make this form much shorter, because here we put for testing a height of 1000. Let's delete the height. The next step we need to do is to submit this form and call the create assistant API. Alright, and for that we're gonna use the brand new server actions from the Next.js 14. And for that, here we need to create an actions. Inside the lib folder we're gonna create a file called actions.ts. Alright, inside the action file I'm gonna define the action that I want to use. Here I'm gonna say export const create assistant action. Alright, this function is gonna be an asynchronous function. Let's say a sync function, and inside this function we're gonna handle our logic. Alright, and with our assistant action we're gonna go back to our form. Now inside our form I'm gonna put the action. Let's say here I'm gonna say action that is gonna be create assistant action. Make sure you're gonna import the action here. And now here on the actions I'm gonna say here use server to specify that it's gonna be a server action. Alright, and if I'm gonna call this action, we need to see here in the terminal this message. Alright, going back to our assistant, if I'm gonna click on create assistant, here you can see that I've called this action directly on the server. So inside our action here you can see that every action can receive form data. What is form data, you might think? Form data contains every values from every input fields that contains the name. For demonstration I'm gonna say here const name equals to the form data dot get name. Alright, now I'm gonna go log the name dot log name. Alright, so if I'm gonna put here the assistant name, let's say worker, and I'm gonna click on create assistant, here see name worker. Alright, so I've retrieved the information here from this input field, and for that and for instruction and description and every other field we need to do the same. I've created my own custom checkbox, and here you can see I've created a state with tools, and for each tools I've assigned the value false. And here I have the handle checkbox change function, and when I change something I assign to the index of the tool the value true. So basically here it creates a new array for the tool status with the value true for the index of, and here I've removed the checkbox from Shatien and I basically put an input of type checkbox, and on change I call this function, and then with the name here on my actions I get the isFunction tool, isRetrieval tool, or isCodeInterpreter tool, and then I'm gonna log them here. Let's see here if I'm gonna check the function tool and hit create assistant. Here you can see that isFunction tool is gonna be true and the rest of them is gonna be false. And so here I have the name, the description, the instructions, and every tool that my assistant is gonna have. So now I just have to create our assistant. For that I'm gonna install the OpenAI library, npm install OpenAI. Then I need to create here an .env file to store my OpenAI API key. Let's say here open underscore AI underscore API key. To create the API key for our application, we just need to log in, and here on the API keys section you're gonna see your API keys. I'm gonna copy the key and here I'm gonna paste it, and I'm gonna close the .env file. Now on the action file, on top of the file, I'm gonna create a new instance of the OpenAI. I'm gonna import it from the OpenAI library. This instance is gonna contain our API key, and now we can come back here and we can see that to create the assistant, basically we need to copy this code, and here I'm gonna paste this code. Alright, in the instruction field I'm gonna put my instruction. Here on the name field I'm gonna put the name. On the description I'm gonna put the description. Here we're gonna define a tools array. Let's say const tools. Alright, don't import this tool. Tools, alright, and if his function tool is gonna be to, let's say, true. Alright, I'm gonna push to this array tools.push type function. Alright, if I'm gonna have an is retrieval true, I'm gonna push to this array. Alright, and for the code interpreter I'm gonna have if is code interpreter tool is gonna be to true. I'm gonna basically push code interpreter to the tools array. Right after that I'm gonna log the tools array. Now let's check if I'm gonna check the code interpreter and the function. Let's check. So here you can see that I've created the tools array. So I need to put here a string to make our TypeScript happy, because here you return a type of form data entry value and null, but here you just need to put a string, a null or undefined. So you're gonna do the same for every field, for the description as well as the name. Now you can see that we don't have any TypeScript error. We just need to put here the tools array, name, description, instructions, and the tools. Tools expect an array of strings. Here we might put an ts ignore. Alright, for the tools. And now if I'm gonna put here the name of my assistant, let's say Candy Worker, you are an expert in suites. Alright, and the description is gonna be the same. We need to have code interpreter and retrieval. And now if I'm gonna create the assistant, I get this error because GPT-4 cannot be in the retrieval to consider using GPT preview and GPT 555 turbo or later model. Alright, and I think the retrieval 2 doesn't work with the GPT-4, so I'm gonna use GPT 555 turbo for this example. Let's say again, and now you can see in the terminal that we've created our assistant successfully. Alright, here you can see that we got the ID of the assistant, the object type created, name, description, instruction, and everything. And now that we've created our assistant, we need to notify our user into our interface, and for that revalidate path, that is gonna be the first path, the main page. This is gonna be revalidated, that means it's gonna refetch everything from the sidebar. And after that we want to redirect the user to this page after we create the assistant, and here we're gonna put the assistant name. So for that we're gonna say here redirect to the first page. And after that we want to show in the interface a toast of type success, and we need to return an object with the message of type success. No, we're gonna say assistant created successfully. And here inside my create assistant page, let's say that I want to use an use effect. I'm gonna import the use effect from React. And for that, Next.js offers us a very helpful hook that is called useFormState. And with this useFormState, let's go back to our application here. We're gonna import the useFormState. Alright, so for the first argument here we need to put our action. We're gonna put create assistant action, and here we need to put the initial state. You can see here in the example the initial state is gonna be an object with the message null, and we also put the same initial state message of null. Alright, here you can see that now we have a TypeScript error, because if we're gonna go back on the argument of the action, we need to provide another argument that is gonna be initial state, and you can give the type of any, or maybe a type of message that is gonna be a string. Alright, so now we're gonna put our form action in the action, and here the state is gonna be the initial state, but when an action is gonna be successful or is gonna have an error, the state is gonna be modified with the message. Let's say here console.log state, And now let's see here inside of our action that when we're gonna successfully create the assistant, we're gonna send the assistant created successfully. But let's make one thing. I want here when I create my assistant, let's put a try catch block and let's move this code up. And if I have an error, let's say inside the catch I have an error of type any, and I'm gonna console error, and then I'm gonna return an error with I'm gonna return a message with the message error. And here I need to put the use client. Let's go back to create the assistant. Let's create. Alright, so I think for the functions we need to pass more arguments here, and for that I'm gonna uncheck this and I'm gonna hit create assistant. Now here you can see that we've successfully created the assistant. But one thing that I should do is to put here to the use effect to re-render every time the state is changing. Let's say state.message. If the state.message is changing, the use effect is gonna be trigger. So you can see here that the message appear. Alright, you can see here the toast looks pretty good. We need to install it. We need to add it to our root layout to be shown on every page. Alright, add it here. Make sure it's from UI toaster. And to call the toaster, you just need to call this function. And here I'm gonna call this toast with the title that is gonna be state.message. And the description is gonna be null. But I want to call this toast only if the message is correctly. If the message, the state that message is equal to this message that is gonna be invoked from our action assistant created successfully. If it's gonna be equal to this message, then I'm gonna show the toast. Alright, so here I've created the toast and I put the variant of type success. Alright, and now if I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna put some code interpreter and hit create assistant, you can see that here I successfully created the assistant. I want from the router object to take the push function, and with the push function I want to go here and push the main page. make sure that is from the next navigation. Alright, now I think I've created a lot of assistants. To see your assistants, you can go here to the assistants tab, and here you can see that I have a ton of assistants. Next thing that I want to do is to delete the assistant. I want to do in this interface. Basically, I'm gonna create my own interface to delete the assistant. So I'm gonna create a delete assistant button inside my sidebar. RFCE. Alright, here I'm gonna have the same button like create a system button, and I'm gonna say delete assistant. Alright, we need to put them inside the fragment. Inside the div, let's put with full, and the space of y of 5, flex none, flex column. Alright, so we are back in the business. Now we have a delete assistant button. We're gonna create a page. Let's say delete assistant page RFCE assistant page. Here we need to put flex of 1. Let's make this a main tag. Let's add here a link. It is gonna contain the create assistant text, and it's gonna go to delete assistant. Alright, let's delete the page 2 and 3. Alright, so now I have the delete assistant page, and here we're gonna show all of our assistants, and with a click of a button we're gonna delete them. And div of this class name of the form. Alright, and here I need to loop through all of my assistants and show the possibility to delete them. So for that I'm gonna create inside the of libs, I'm gonna create a file called fetchers.ts that is gonna handle all of my fetching logic inside my application. Let's say here export const function. Alright, that is gonna be an async function. Now I'm gonna paste all of this code here. that is gonna retrieve the assistance, but we need to do the same just like the actions here. We need to get an instance of OpenAI. Alright, so now my function is gonna retrieve all the assistants, and now I'm gonna return them. Here I'm gonna make the function an async function. Alright, and then here I'm gonna get all my assistants, const assistants equals to await fetch all assistants. Alright, and now here I'm gonna get all the assistants. Let's console log them at first. And now if I'm going back here in my terminal, here you can see that I've listed all of my assistants. Now what I need to do is to loop through them. Here let's say assistants.map, right, and the Copilot give us the result. Let's see here. And here you can see that we have the option to delete them. Let's style this. Let's say BG of white, text of black. Let's round it them of LG. Let's put an items of center, and then we're gonna put an padding of 2. Alright, let's make the name of the assistant much bigger. Class name equals to the text of LG. So now if I'm gonna click on this delete button, I need to call another action